Get away from my daughter, boy. You're nothing but dirt beneath her shoes. You think saving her gives you a place in this family? I'll bury you before that happens. Sophia, you will forget that boy, or I will make him disappear forever. Do you know what happens to street rats who touch what isn't theirs? They vanish. A billionaire's daughter belongs to no beggar boy. Cross me, and you'll never see daylight again. Those were the cruel words Vivian Lancaster, one of the wealthiest women in America, spat at the homeless teen who had dragged her daughter back from death. She had no idea that the very evidence she planted to destroy him would become the weapon that brought her empire crashing down. What happened next will make you question everything you think you know about wealth, loyalty, and revenge. Viewers, have you ever been judged as worthless, only for fate to flip the story upside down? How did it feel? Share your thoughts in the comments. The plaza hummed with the rhythm of a city too busy to care. Shoes clicked against polished marble, perfume trailed behind designer handbags, laughter spilled from coffee shops. Nobody noticed the boy sitting cross-legged by the subway entrance except to drop the occasional coin without slowing down. His name was Caleb Hart, 14, his shoulders narrower than his will to survive. His t-shirt clung to him with dirt and sweat, but his sketchbook, edges taped, pages filled with faces of strangers, sat in his lap like treasure. A woman in heels walked past, muttering, "Waste of space." Caleb didn't answer. He only shaded the line of her jaw in graphite, committing her sharpness to paper. He drew everyone who ignored him. That was his silent revenge. He would capture them on paper and keep their likeness long after they had forgotten him. But when a girl collapsed across the plaza, his pencil froze. She fell hard, her head missing the curb by inches. No one ran to her. Phones came out instead, eager to record another downtown spectacle. Caleb shoved his sketchbook into his backpack and sprinted. The girl was about his age, her chest heaving in shallow bursts, lips trembling blue. Her hair was silk dark, her clothes too clean, too expensive to belong in this chaos. Caleb's heart hammered. He had seen this before, his mother, choking for air in the middle of the night when cancer and pneumonia had stolen her breath. Caleb tore through his backpack, his fingers brushing against the plastic shell of his mother's old inhaler. He kept it as memory, as penance, as proof that he had once belonged to someone. "Don't die, please," he whispered, pressing it to her lips. "Breathe with me. In. Out. In. Out." The girl's lungs fought, then caught. A thin stream of air hissed back into her chest. Her eyes opened wide, glazed with tears and terror, and locked on Caleb. She clutched his wrist, not letting go, as if he were the only anchor in a world spinning too fast. From across the plaza, a black SUV screeched to the curb. Men in suits poured out, pushing Caleb aside. A tall woman in a diamond necklace and sharp gray suit stepped down, her heels clicking like gunshots. Vivian Lancaster. Everyone knew her name. The billionaire behind Lancaster Global, a woman whose face graced magazine covers with the words Empire Builder. "Don't touch her," Vivian snapped at Caleb, voice cutting through the crowd like glass. "Do you have any idea who this is?" "I don't care who she is," Caleb spat back, breathless. She needed help. Sophia Lancaster's hand trembled as she pointed at him. "Mama, he saved me." "Not you. Him." The words hung heavy. People whispered. Cameras flashed. Vivian's eyes narrowed, fury flashing where gratitude should have been. She didn't see a boy. She saw a threat. And Caleb, breathing hard, already knew, this wasn't over. The security men yanked Caleb back as if he were a criminal. His thin body stumbled against the curb, but his eyes never left the girl gasping in her mother's arms. The inhaler clattered to the ground, and one of the guards kicked it aside like trash. Caleb bent to pick it up, clutching it protectively, whispering under his breath, "It was my mom's." He didn't explain further. He didn't need to. The way his fingers shook over the cracked plastic told the story of sleepless nights when he had begged God not to take her away. Vivian's sharp eyes caught the inhaler, then flicked back to Caleb. She filed it away in her mind. To her, every detail was leverage. Caleb stood still as cameras flashed. A man in the crowd muttered, "Isn't that the Lancaster girl?" Another voice added, "She almost died." The murmurs rolled into a tide of curiosity, phones rising higher. Vivian's hand tightened on Sophia's arm, forcing her back toward the SUV. "You are coming with me. Now." But Sophia dug in her heels, her gaze locked on Caleb. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Why does it feel like he cared more than you do?" The sentence stung, and Vivian's perfect smile cracked for a second before she recovered. She shoved her daughter inside the SUV, the door slamming like a gunshot. The engine roared, swallowing them whole. Caleb stood alone again, the crowd dispersing. Only the echo of Sophia's words hung in his ears. That night, sleep wouldn't come. Caleb curled up under the overpass, his sketchbook open on his lap, the lamplight above flickering. He drew her face, the billionaire's daughter who had nearly died in his arms. His pencil traced the outline of her terrified eyes, but then his mother's voice seeped back into memory. "One day, Caleb, your art will outlive hunger. Your kindness will outlive hate." He remembered her coughing in bed, gripping his small hand as she pressed the inhaler into his palm. "You keep this. Not because it works, but because it reminds you, you saved me once, too." He had. For one more night. Until he couldn't. Meanwhile, across the city, Sophia sat in her enormous bedroom, walls lined with books she never read. The room was gilded in gold trim, chandeliers dangling like crystal cages. Her phone buzzed with endless texts from girls she pretended were friends, but she tossed it aside. She stared at her reflection, still pale, still trembling, replaying Caleb's voice in her head, "Don't die, please. Breathe with me." No one had ever spoken to her like that, not her tutors, not the maids, not even her mother. They treated her like porcelain. He treated her like a person. She whispered into the empty air, "I want to see him again." Down the hall, Vivian poured herself a glass of wine and studied the day's headlines on her tablet. Lancaster heiress saved in public incident. The photographs showed Caleb kneeling beside Sophia, their hands locked. Vivian's jaw tightened. To the public, it looked like a fairy tale, homeless boy saves billionaire's daughter. But Vivian didn't believe in fairy tales. She believed in control. And anyone who disrupted that control, no matter how young, was an enemy. She whispered to the glass, "You won't ruin her, boy. I'll ruin you first." And in that moment, the war began. High-voltage retention engineering in this segment. Backstory plus foreshadowing seamlessly woven, Caleb's mother's gift of the inhaler, Sophia's golden cage, Vivian's obsession with image/control. Dialogue heightens emotional tension. Why does it feel like he cared more than you do? Micro cliffhanger. Curiosity loop, Sophia's desire to see Caleb again versus Vivian's vow of destruction. Brutal revenge foreshadowed. Vivian doesn't just plan to cut Caleb off, she plans to crush him. 2 days passed before Sophia dared to slip out. She timed it perfectly, just after her mother's driver dropped her at her fencing lesson. Instead of going inside, she circled around the building, pulling her hoodie low, and disappeared into the stream of pedestrians. For the first time in years, she felt the electric thrill of being invisible. Her security detail would panic once they noticed, but that only made her move faster. She remembered the boy's face, the way he clutched that inhaler as though it was his lifeline, and her heart wouldn't let her forget him. She found him in the same place, by the subway entrance, his sketchbook spread open, pencil flying across the page. He didn't notice her at first. His tongue pressed against his lip in concentration as he shaded the cheekbone of a woman walking by. Sophia stepped closer and saw the likeness was uncanny. She whispered, "You're amazing." Caleb startled, snapping the book shut. His eyes darted to her hoodie, then widened in recognition. "You, what are you doing here? If your mother sees..." "She won't," Sophia said quickly. "She doesn't know. I had to thank you properly." Caleb looked at her skeptically. "Your bodyguard shoved me like I was garbage." Her face flushed. "I'm sorry. That's her way. She doesn't trust anyone. Not even me." The raw honesty in her voice disarmed him. He hesitated, then slid the sketchbook back open, showing her the drawing of her face. "I already drew you. Couldn't get it out of my head." Her breath caught. No one had ever seen her that way, not as the Lancaster heiress, but as a terrified girl on the ground, clutching at life. She touched the page softly. "Keep it. It's me, but more real." For the first time since his mother's funeral, Caleb felt his chest ache with something other than hunger. Flashbacks stitched themselves across his mind, the last night in the hospice, his mother whispering, "Don't grow hard, Caleb. Kindness is strength." That memory bled into the present, where Sophia's eyes searched his for proof that she wasn't just another ghost in a gilded house. Meanwhile, back in the Lancaster estate, Vivian's intuition gnawed at her. She didn't rise to the top of global business without knowing when she was being undermined. She called her private investigator, a man named Carson who had buried more secrets for the rich than he had revealed. "The boy who touched my daughter," she said coldly. "I want everything on him. Family, past, weaknesses. If he has any ties, I'll sever them. If he has nowhere to go, I'll make sure he never goes near her again." Carson smirked. "A homeless kid? Easy." Vivian swirled her wine. "No one is easy. Everyone has an angle. Find his." And as Caleb and Sophia sat together on the curb, laughing over her attempt to sketch his portrait, hers crooked, his perfect, the shadow of Vivian's order already stretched across the city, tightening around them both. Carson returned to the Lancaster estate at dusk, his shoes echoing against marble as if announcing the weight of the truth he carried. Vivian didn't offer him a seat, she rarely did. She sipped her wine, eyes fixed on the horizon beyond the glass wall. "What did you find?" Carson opened the file. Caleb Hart. 14. Mother, Anna Hart, deceased, lung cancer. Father, Richard Hart, construction worker, died in an accident 5 years ago. No guardians left. He bounced between foster homes before disappearing from the system. Last known address was a group home shut down for neglect. He slid a photograph across the table, a younger Caleb, smiling beside his mother, her scarf wrapped around her head. Vivian's hand froze on her glass. She saw something in his eyes that unnerved her, not weakness, but resilience. Carson continued. "He's been surviving on the streets. Sketching portraits for change. Keeps to himself. No criminal record. But..." Carson's tone dipped, "A boy with nothing is dangerous. He'll cling to whatever gives him hope. Right now. That's Sophia." Vivian's lips curved into a cold smile. "Then I'll take that hope from him. Strip it clean." While Vivian sharpened her strategy, Caleb and Sophia sat on the steps outside the library downtown. Sophia had ditched her chauffeur again, slipping into Caleb's world with a kind of awe that made him laugh. He showed her the quick strokes of his pencil, teaching her to catch the angle of a stranger's jawline. Her attempts were clumsy, but she grinned anyway. "Don't laugh," she warned, swatting his arm. "I'm not," Caleb chuckled, then softened. "You're actually trying. Most people don't even look at me long enough to see what I do." Her smile faded. "People don't look at me either, Caleb. They just see Lancaster. They don't see me." Her words echoed in his chest. For a moment, the noise of the city dulled, and all he heard was the truth neither of them could escape. One chained by poverty, the other by wealth. Flashbacks blurred into the present, Sophia's childhood birthdays where rooms overflowed with gifts but not guests. Vivian always left halfway through for business calls, promising, next year will be different. It never was. That hollow loneliness bled into Sophia's voice now as she whispered, I feel freer sitting here with you than I ever have at home. Caleb hesitated, then offered the photograph he kept folded in his pocket, his mother, smiling weakly in her hospital bed, holding his hand. This is why I keep going. She told me my kindness would outlive me. I don't know if I believe her. But when I saved you, for a second, I did. Sophia traced the edges of the worn photo, her eyes damp. Then don't stop believing it. Neither noticed the man across the street snapping photos, his camera shutter hidden under the buzz of traffic. Carson had his proof. Caleb and Sophia's bond wasn't a chance meeting. It was growing, dangerous in Vivian's eyes. When Carson delivered the photos later, Vivian's nails tapped against the glass table. She thinks she can defy me, she said, her voice low and sharp. But I will remind her, and him, that crossing me carries consequences. Her reflection in the glass shimmered like steel. And with it, the outline of a plan that promised not just separation, but destruction. Caleb woke to heavy footsteps crunching gravel above his underpass. Two men in uniform loomed, their flashlights slicing through the shadows. You Caleb Hart, one barked. Caleb froze, clutching his sketchbook against his chest. He nodded cautiously. You're coming with us. What did I do? Caleb's voice cracked, panic rising like bile. Loitering. Trespassing. One officer flipped through a paper, suspected theft from Lancaster Global Headquarters. Got your name right here. That's a lie. Caleb shouted, stumbling back. But his words drowned in the clink of cuffs snapping around his wrists. The photograph of his mother fluttered from his pocket, landing in the dirt. From a black car across the street, Vivian Lancaster watched through tinted glass. She swirled the stem of her wine glass like she was celebrating, her eyes fixed coldly on the boy dragged into the patrol car. Carson leaned from the front seat. You asked for distance between him and Sophia. Nothing pushes people apart like a record. Vivian smirked. No one will believe her precious savior is anything but a criminal now. Caleb sat silent in the back of the car, the memory of his mother's last words pounding in his head. Kindness will outlive you. But kindness couldn't stop forged reports, or lies signed by powerful hands. At the mansion, Sophia sensed something was wrong. She had been waiting near the gates, hoping to sneak out again, when she spotted Carson return and whisper something to her mother. Vivian's smile, sharp, victorious, made her stomach twist. That night at dinner, she asked, "Where's Caleb?" Vivian's fork clinked against her plate. That boy. He's exactly where he belongs. The police caught him stealing. That's not true. Sophia slammed her hand on the table. He would never. Vivian's eyes narrowed. You think you know him because you sat on a sidewalk? Men like him survive by taking. That inhaler he used, stolen. That sketchbook, stolen paper. Don't be naive, Sophia. He saw you as a ticket out. Sophia's breath caught. A flicker of doubt pierced her loyalty. But then she remembered Caleb's trembling hand when he'd shown her the photo of his mother. His voice whispering, I saved you because I couldn't save her. That wasn't the voice of a thief. That was the voice of someone who had already lost too much. She whispered, You're lying. Vivian leaned forward, her tone like steel. Believe me or don't. But if you disobey me again, I'll make sure he disappears for good. The threat silenced Sophia, but her heart roared with defiance. She clutched the hem of her dress under the table, nails digging into her palm. She remembered every locked door, every lonely birthday, every hollow promise from her mother. And now she saw the truth, Vivian didn't want to protect her. She wanted to own her. Outside, Caleb sat in a holding cell, sketchbook confiscated, his future chained by lies. He pressed his head against the cold bars and whispered to the dark, "She'll know I didn't do it. She has to." But in the distance, a guard's radio crackled with new orders. Vivian wasn't finished. This was only the beginning. The mansion slept in silence, but Sophia's heart raced as she crept barefoot down the hall. The doors were lined with alarms, but she had memorized the blind spots years ago. Her mother's office glowed faintly under the crack of the door, guarded not by men but by codes and locks. Sophia's fingers trembled as she entered the numbers. She had watched Vivian punch them in enough times during late-night meetings to know them by heart. The lock clicked open like a secret betraying itself. Inside, the office smelled of leather and power. Files were stacked neatly on the mahogany desk, contracts stamped with Lancaster Global's seal. Sophia rifled through them, searching for anything with Caleb's name. When she saw the folder marked Heart, Caleb, her throat tightened. Inside were police reports, signatures, evidence of theft, all too perfect. Sophia recognized the smooth stroke of Carson's forged handwriting. She whispered to herself, "You framed him." The sound of footsteps in the hall jolted her. She shoved the folder into her hoodie pocket, barely slipping out before Vivian's shadow crossed the glass door. Vivian entered, wine glass in hand, not noticing the missing file. She stood at the window, speaking to the night. "You think you can steal my daughter's loyalty, boy? I built empires by crushing men twice your size. You will break like the rest." Sophia pressed her back to the cold wall outside, her heart pounding. She had the proof. But proof was useless unless she could get it to Caleb. Meanwhile, in the holding cell downtown, Caleb traced the cracks in the wall with his fingertip. The guards had confiscated his sketchbook, but they hadn't taken his memory. He etched Sophia's face in his mind, her wide eyes, the way she said keep believing. He whispered to himself, "They think I'll rot here. But I won't. I promised my mom I'd fight. I'll fight." A fellow inmate, a gaunt man with hollow cheeks, chuckled from the corner. "First night inside and you're already talking to ghosts. Rookie mistake." Caleb turned sharply. "I don't belong here. They set me up." The man shrugged. "Doesn't matter. Out there, the rich write the rules. In here, you learn to survive." Those words echoed a flashback from years ago, his father, calloused hands guiding Caleb's on a hammer, saying, "The world doesn't give. It takes. You want to survive? You fight back harder." That lesson had followed Caleb like a curse. Now it burned like fuel. Back at the mansion, Sophia stared at her reflection in her gilded mirror. Her hands clutched the stolen file. Her mother had always told her she was weak, fragile, incapable. But tonight, she felt something new coil in her chest, anger. The same anger she'd felt every birthday her mother abandoned her for a boardroom, every hospital night she fought asthma attacks alone. This time, it wasn't fear holding her. It was defiance. She whispered to herself, "If she wants war, I'll give her one." And in his cell, Caleb whispered the same. The detention center smelled of bleach and despair, but Sophia forced herself through the doors. She had slipped past her driver with the excuse of visiting a charity wing, but the folder hidden beneath her sweater told a different story. The guard raised an eyebrow when she gave Caleb's name, but a Lancaster ID card opened every door in the city. When Caleb shuffled in, his wrists still red from the cuffs, his eyes widened. "You shouldn't be here." "I had to," Sophia whispered, sliding into the chair across the scratched glass table. She pressed the folder against it. "I found this in my mother's office. Caleb, she framed you. Look, Carson forged everything." Caleb's hands trembled as he opened the file. His breath caught when he saw his name scrawled across fake reports, evidence planted to brand him a thief. Anger flashed in his chest, sharp and suffocating. She did this, because I saved you. No, Sophia said, her voice cracking. Because I care about you. And she can't control that. Her words ripped something open inside him. He remembered sitting in court years ago, foster care hearings where social workers labeled him a flight risk, unfit for placement. No one had believed him then either. Now he stared at the only person who did, and the weight of that belief nearly broke him. Caleb leaned forward, whispering urgently. Sophia, if she knows you took this. She already suspects, Sophia admitted, her eyes glistening. But I don't care anymore. I'm not going to let her destroy you. Caleb's throat tightened. For a boy abandoned by the world, the words felt like light breaking through cracked walls. But before he could answer, the guard cleared his throat. Time's up. Sophia stood quickly, her fingers brushing his across the table. I'll find a way to clear you. I promise. He caught her gaze. Then I'll survive until you do. When Sophia returned home, Vivian was waiting. She sat in the darkened parlor, the glow of her cigarette the only light. You've been busy, Vivian said coolly. Sophia froze, her heart pounding. Detention centers leave visitor logs, darling. Did you think I wouldn't know? Sophia's voice faltered, but she steadied it. You lied about him. I saw the file. Vivian's laugh was soft, dangerous. Children see shadows and call them monsters. You think you can challenge me? I don't lose wars, Sophia. I end them. Flashbacks flooded Sophia, every time her mother had walked out on her, every broken promise, every cold dismissal. This time, though, she didn't shrink. You may own companies, mother. But you don't own me. Vivian's smile vanished, replaced by something sharper. If you want to play against me, then you'll learn how brutal I can be. You'll regret choosing him. In that moment, Vivian's revenge shifted from Caleb to her own daughter. And Caleb, alone in his cell, could feel the storm gathering long before the lightning struck. The next morning, Sophia awoke to silence. Her phone was gone, her laptop missing, even the books she had stacked by her window replaced with empty space. She rushed to her closet, only to find her credit cards and cash stripped from her drawers. Panic prickled her chest as she stormed down the stairs. Vivian sat in the sunroom, her silk robe catching the light, a newspaper spread across her lap. You took everything, Sophia accused, her voice shaking. Vivian didn't look up. Correction, I reclaimed what was never yours to begin with. You can't just. I can, Vivian interrupted smoothly. And I will. You've grown arrogant, believing your choices matter. They don't. Not while you live under my roof. Sophia clenched her fists, her breath shallow. You're punishing me for caring about him. Vivian's eyes finally lifted, sharp and cold. No. I'm punishing you for betraying me. She folded the paper, the headline flashing, Lancaster heiress visits detention center. The article was short, speculative, but enough to draw whispers. Do you realize the humiliation? My daughter sneaking off to consort with a criminal. Do you know how many investors called me this morning? They think I've lost control. Sophia's voice trembled, but she stood tall. Maybe you have. Vivian's lips thinned. Then I'll remind you how much control I have left. She rose, her presence towering. From this day forward, your inheritance is frozen. Your staff will answer to me directly. And your freedom, she leaned close, her breath warm and venomous, is revoked. Flashbacks bled into Sophia's mind, childhood afternoons where she pressed her face against the window, watching other children ride bikes while guards kept her inside. Vivian's voice back then was always the same, I'm protecting you, darling. But tonight, Sophia finally saw it for what it was. Not protection. Possession. Meanwhile, Caleb sat in a transport van, wrists chained. The guard beside him muttered, "You're being transferred to juvenile state. Records say you'll be here a while." Caleb's stomach sank. Vivian's reach was everywhere. He glanced out the barred window, remembering his father's voice on a long-ago fishing trip, "Son, men like me get buried in systems. But you, fight smarter, not harder." He clenched his jaw. He wouldn't let them bury him. In the mansion, Sophia paced her room, her reflection glaring back from the mirror. The stolen folder lay hidden under her mattress, her last weapon. She whispered to herself, "If she wants to strip me of everything, then I'll strip her of her lies." Vivian entered without knocking. "Don't bother resisting, Sophia. Caleb will vanish into the system. You'll forget him, just like you forgot every other fleeting fascination." Sophia met her mother's gaze with steel. "I won't forget him. And one day, you'll regret underestimating me." For the first time, Vivian's smile faltered. It lasted only a second, but Sophia caught it. A crack in the armor. And cracks, she knew, could be shattered. The walls of juvenile detention pressed down on Caleb like a second skin. The clang of bars, the jeers of older boys, the stink of sweat and fear, it all tried to remind him he didn't belong. A boy with a scar along his jaw shoved him in the cafeteria line. "Street rat," he sneered, knocking Caleb's tray to the ground. Caleb's fists curled, but his mother's voice whispered back, "Kindness is strength, Caleb. Don't let them turn you hard." He bent, picked up the tray, and walked away. Laughter chased him, but so did a strange kind of respect. One of the older inmates, sitting alone at the corner, muttered, "Takes guts not to swing back." Caleb glanced at him, silently filing the moment away. He would need allies here, even if they came from broken places. Across the city, Sophia sat at her vanity, stripped of her freedom, her phone, her allowance. But not her will. She pulled the stolen folder from under her mattress, spreading the forged reports across the desk. Her fingers traced Carson's signature, committing every stroke to memory. A plan began to take shape. She couldn't fight her mother head-on. Vivian owned the police, the courts, even the headlines. But she could fight with exposure. Her mind flashed back to nights when she was 12, sneaking into boardrooms after her mother's meetings. She had always lingered at the edges, invisible to men in suits, listening as they whispered about bribes, hush money, quiet scandals. Vivian had once told her, "Knowledge is currency, darling. And I own more of it than anyone alive." Now, Sophia thought, maybe it was time to use that currency against her. She whispered into the empty room, "I'll use your weapons, mother. Against you." But defiance carried risk. That evening at dinner, Vivian's eyes were daggers. "Still sulking, Sophia? Or have you learned your place?" Sophia forced her voice steady. "I'm learning." Vivian leaned forward. "Good. Because Caleb won't last long inside. Boys like him either break or vanish. Either way, he's gone." Sophia's spoon clattered against her plate. She remembered Caleb's words at the detention center, "I'll survive until you do." She clung to them like armor. Back in his cell, Caleb lay awake on the thin mattress. His sketchbook was gone, but he scratched faint drawings into the concrete with a broken piece of plastic. He drew Sophia's eyes, her hand brushing his, the folder she had risked everything to show him. It gave him a reason to breathe. The scarred boy from the cafeteria walked past, pausing to glance at the etchings. "That your girl?" Caleb didn't answer, but his silence was enough. The boy smirked. "You'll need protection if you want to make it out of here. Stick close to me. In here, nothing's free, but loyalty counts." Caleb met his gaze, and a flicker of something hardened in his chest. For the first time, he understood, survival wasn't just about fighting. It was about choosing who to fight with. And as Sophia plotted exposure in the gilded cage of her bedroom, and Caleb carved sketches into stone, both whispered the same vow into different silences. I'll fight. Smarter. Harder. Until she falls. Sophia waited until the house was quiet before slipping into the study again. She pulled the stolen folder from her sweater, scanning the pages until she found Carson's forged affidavit. Her pulse raced as she snapped photos with a hidden disposable camera she had smuggled in from a servant sympathetic to her. The servant, a housemaid named Clara, had whispered as she handed it over, "Be careful, Miss Sophia. If your mother finds out," Sophia had squeezed her hand. "She already knows I'm defying her. What she doesn't know is how far I'll go." She knew exactly who to send the pictures to. Months earlier, she had overheard her mother cursing the name of a journalist from the Daily Herald, a man who had once written about shady government contracts. Sophia had remembered every detail. His name, his persistence, the way her mother called him, a snake who refuses to die. If he hated Vivian enough to dig, he'd be her weapon. She whispered to herself, "You taught me knowledge is currency, mother. Now I'll spend it against you." Meanwhile, Caleb's first week in detention had been an unending gauntlet. Whispers followed him, the rich girl's pet, the boy who thought he was special. That night, in the dimly lit yard, the scarred boy who had offered protection stood over him again. "Tonight you choose, heart. With us, or against us." 3 other boys circled, fists cracking, eyes hungry for blood. Caleb's heart pounded. He remembered his father teaching him to fight with bare knuckles in their backyard. The flashback was vivid, his father's booming voice, "You never swing first. But when you swing, son, you make it count." When the first punch came, Caleb dodged, his body fueled by years of hunger and desperation. He didn't fight to win, he fought to stand. Every blow he took, he staggered back up. Blood trickled from his lip, his arms bruised, but his eyes never left the scarred boy's. Finally, after what felt like hours, the boy lifted a hand. Enough. Caleb collapsed to his knees, chest heaving. The boy crouched beside him, smirking. "You've got fire, kid. That'll keep you alive. Stay close. Maybe we'll keep you breathing." As Caleb wiped blood from his mouth, he whispered to himself, "I'll survive until she does." Back at the mansion, Sophia wrapped the camera in a plain envelope, scribbling the journalist's name and leaving it at the back gate. Clara promised she knew a driver who could pass it along. Sophia prayed it would reach the right hands. But Vivian had eyes everywhere. That night, as Sophia lay in bed, her door opened without warning. Vivian stepped inside, holding the torn remains of a disposable camera. "You think I don't notice when my own staff betray me?" Her voice was quiet, almost gentle, which made it more terrifying. Sophia sat up, heart hammering. "I won't stop." Vivian's smile spread, thin and dangerous. "Then you've declared war, daughter. And wars have casualties." The Daily Herald hit the streets at dawn. Bold black letters screamed across the front page, "Lancaster Empire built on fraud, daughter's secret evidence exposes billionaire matriarch." Photos of Carson's forged report sat beneath the headline, Caleb's name circled in red ink. The article detailed years of intimidation, bribes, and cover-ups. Vivian Lancaster's empire, once untouchable, now trembled under the weight of exposure. At the juvenile facility, guards rushed into Caleb's cell. He braced for another beating, but instead they unlocked his cuffs. "Pack your things, heart. You're out." He blinked, stunned. "Out? Turns out you're not the criminal they said you were. Looks like the world knows your name now." Caleb stepped into the daylight, squinting as the sun poured over him. For the first time in years, he wasn't running from shadows, he was walking toward freedom. Waiting at the gates was Sophia, her hair windblown, her eyes rimmed with exhaustion but burning with triumph. She whispered, "I told you I'd find a way." Caleb's throat tightened. And I told you I'd survive. But the victory was far from bloodless. Back at the mansion, Vivian paced like a caged lioness as reporters swarmed her gates. Investors pulled out, board members resigned, whispers of federal investigations thickened in the air. She turned when Sophia entered, clutching the empty folder like a blade. "You did this," Vivian hissed. Sophia stood straighter than she ever had. "No, Mother. You did this to yourself. I only showed the world the truth." Vivian's voice cracked, a rare fracture. "You've destroyed me." Sophia's reply was calm, final. "No. I freed myself." The confrontation ended with silence, the kind that falls when a war is lost not by weapons, but by truth. Vivian's reflection in the mirror behind her looked older, smaller, no longer untouchable. For Caleb, freedom was only the beginning. Reporters hounded him, charities extended offers, strangers called him a hero. But he wanted none of their pity. What he wanted, what he needed, was a chance. With Sophia's help, he enrolled in a community school. The transition was brutal. He had missed years of classes, stumbled over equations, froze when asked to speak in front of others. Nights found him hunched over borrowed textbooks, whispering formulas to himself the way he once whispered his mother's prayers. There were failures, failing grades, mocked presentations, but each time he fell, he remembered his father's words, "When you swing, son, make it count." He swung again, harder. Slowly, victories came. Passing marks turned to top scores,